Hey everyone! Welcome to day 11 of my 12 Days of Interactive December Dailies video series. Today I'm working on story 29 in my 10x8 December daily album, and this one is documenting some of the things I baked throughout the month of December, as well as some cakes that I was baking on December 29th for my boyfriend's birthday. And I originally came up with this idea to do an interactive oven after I made this COVID newspaper dispensing stand last year, which has kind of the same interactive mechanism. But I thought having two of the same mechanism in one album wouldn't be as fun, so I decided to save it for this year. I wanted to make my oven based on what it actually looks like in my kitchen and include some drawers and cabinets and stuff that I could turn into interactive elements. So I started off with a picture that I took of my kitchen while I was facing my oven, and I tried to take this photo straight on as best I could so that I'm not looking down at the oven or looking up at it. And I'm going to use Microsoft Word to create some cut files for myself. Once I have my photo in an 8.5 by 11-inch document, I'm going to enlarge my photo so that it's 8.25 inches tall by 11 inches wide, because I do want this to take up the whole page outside a page protector in my 10x8 album. And next, I'm just using the insert shape function to insert some rectangles into each of these areas I see in my kitchen and resizing them so that they're as close in size as possible to match my photo. So here you'll see that I'm just creating some rectangle areas for my two cabinets on the left side, the three drawers on the right side, and the two pieces of countertop to the left and the right. And then the oven itself, including all its components like the little display where you have the timer and the temperature and the oven door. And Microsoft Word does give an option to make rectangles with rounded corners, so I'm using that shape for some of the elements on my oven as well. And you can see that I'm also doing the panels on my drawer and cabinet doors too, just to give that extra bit of detail. Once I have everything sized appropriately, I'm going to delete the photo in the background, and you can see all the different outlines that I have going on here. And I'm going to separate all of my shapes into different groups depending on what colors I want them to be. So I have a group of white rectangles that I'm going to use to make my cabinets and drawers, the gray pieces to make my countertops, some black pieces for my oven, and then some silver pieces for the details of my oven. And for those silver pieces, I did make sure to leave the openings for the display clock, like where you have the timer, and for the oven door grouped together inside the silver pieces so that the cut file will cut the openings in the silver pieces for me. And although you can see that I'm turning all these rectangles into different solid colors, that's just for the purposes of this video so that you guys can see which pieces are going to be which color. And in reality, I'm going to make all of these shapes black because I find the solid black shapes make for the best cut files. And in case you don't have a cutting machine, don't worry, I will have some measurements for all of these pieces as well so that you can cut them all by hand. But I will have both PNG and SVG files available in a link down below if you guys are interested. So now that I have everything arranged together in color groups, I'm going to select all of the shapes in each color and right-click to group them all together so that they become one image. Then I'm going to right-click to save as a picture. And that's the PNG that I can then use to make a cut file. So depending on what electronic cutting machine you have, you might be able to use a PNG or you would use an SVG. And for my purposes, because I have a Brother Scan and Cut machine, the machine does prefer SVG files, so I did use a converter to turn these PNG files to SVG later on after this video. Here I've cut out all of my pieces using my electronic cutting machine, and I cut the black, gray, and white ones out of textured cardstock, and the silver ones out of silver foiled cardstock. And now it's time to put everything together. This page is going to be a right page in my album, which is going to work perfectly because I'll have the holes punched through the leftmost cabinet, the one that's kind of partially cut off there. And I'll still have the cabinet on the right of that, as well as one of the drawers on the right side to make into interactive elements. I do have a strip of wood grain pattern paper from Michaels that I'm going to be using for my floor. And I decided to back that window where the oven timer and clock is usually located with one of the green word phrase stickers that says baking. And it wasn't quite large enough to fill up that whole space there. So I did decide to back that on one of the gold foiled label stickers that came in the advent calendar before I put it in that window. And as the wallpaper for my kitchen, I'm going to use this wintry botanical pattern paper from my December Daily collection. This one came in the add-on kit from the Ali Edwards shop. And of course, my kitchen is not decorated with anything that looks like this paper, but I thought it would provide a nice pop of color in an otherwise very monochromatic page. So while I'm adhering all these pieces down, I'm going to adhere all the pieces that I know aren't going to be interactive first, and I'll worry about how I'm going to make all of the interactive elements later. You might have noticed that I didn't make cut files for that white part below the cabinets and drawers, and that's just because I wanted to adhere the handle of my oven directly over top of the silver part of the oven, instead of having them be two separate pieces. Just to give that a bit more extra stability, because that is going to be opening and closing. So that's going to make my oven shorter and then make it the same height as the cabinets and the drawers that I have. And now that I have all of my stationery pieces adhered down to my page, I'm going to start on the interactive elements. For this cabinet to the left of my oven, I'm going to make it into a flap opening to the left because that's how the cabinet is in my kitchen. So I'm cutting a piece of white cardstock that is the same height as this cabinet piece, and the width is going to be 1 inch wide. And I'm going to score on that 1/2 inch mark to create a hinge. And as usual for my flips and flaps, I'm going to use some 3/8 of an inch score tape to adhere that hinge down to my base page. For the drawers on the right side, I wanted to make it so that I could pull this middle piece out, just like I would pull out a real drawer, to reveal some journaling. So I'm taking my X-Acto knife and my cutting mat and just cutting a slit directly under that top drawer that's going to be stationary. And you'll notice that I didn't cut the entire width of that drawer. I am leaving about 1/4 of an inch on either side so that it gives me some space to apply some adhesive to the back to create kind of like a pocket later on. And I am going to make a second slit about 1/8 of an inch below that so that the slit is wide enough for me to easily slide a piece of cardstock in and out. And once that's done, I'm cutting a piece of white cardstock to the width of the slit that I just cut. And I'm not worrying too much about the height of the white cardstock here. It just has to be short enough so that when you adhere it down to the back side of your drawer and slide it in, it doesn't protrude out the top of your page. So just adhering that down to the back of my drawer with some more score tape. And after that, I'm moving on to my oven piece, which honestly was like the piece that I was thinking about the most in terms of how I was going to make this work into an interactive element. So I did take a break before I came back and filmed this next section. So I'm going to start off by adhering this bottom piece down to my page, then adhering the actual oven door piece temporarily into place so that I can trace around this window and cut it out with my knife. And because it's kind of hard to make curved edges with these cutting knives, I did take some fancy cutting scissors out to carefully cut around the insides of those rounded corners as well. And you can't actually see what I'm doing in this video because I am holding the page really close to my face to get those precise cuts. And before I adhere that oven door piece down, I am going to back it with some vellum. Then I'm going to cut on my base page right up against the edge of that oven door, including that bottom part where the warming drawer is, because I thought if I just do the oven door part, the opening would probably be too small to fit my photo mats in. I'm also going to peel this top part up a bit. You can see that the handle piece is overlapping my stove section a tiny bit, and I'm just cutting below my stove here so that this entire flap can open, and I can use my scissors to tidy this part up afterwards. And once that's done, I'm going to fold this flap down right along the edge of the bottom of my warming drawer. So off screen, I cut another piece of white cardstock with a round window in it to back this oven door so that I can cover up some of the back of that silver foil cardstock. And depending on what type of foil cardstock you use, you might not have to do this if it's white on the back, but mine is craft colored on the back, so I thought if I backed this that it would look a bit more professional. And I've also printed out a small photo and a photo collage to fit into my cabinet. I am also going to use a magnet in this cabinet door to keep the door shut. And so I just adhered a magnet onto my cabinet door and one inside the cabinet. For my drawer piece, I've printed out my journaling onto some clear sticker paper, one for the front side and one for the back. And I just adhered that down and trimmed off the excess white space on the top. I also decided to round the top two corners of the white cardstock as well. I thought that would help make it a bit easier for this piece to slide in and out of this slit here. And on the back of my drawer piece, I do have a lot of white space on the bottom of this white cardstock where I had adhered that down to the drawer panel. So I decided to fill up that space with some stickers from the sticker advent calendar. I also decided to cut some tiny strips of silver foiled cardstock to serve as kind of like handles for my cabinet doors and drawers, similar to how they look like in my actual kitchen. So first I backed my silver cardstock with some score tape, just so that I don't have to struggle with getting adhesive onto these tiny pieces later on. And I experimented with cutting these strips into different sizes. And the ones that I ended up using are 3/4 inches wide by 1/8 of an inch tall. So just itty bitty little things. And I'm just adhering all of those pieces down here. And I think that by putting the score tape on these before I cut them into small pieces made these a lot easier to adhere. I just had to use my tweezers to carefully peel off the tape backing off of each of those individual strips before I adhered them down. The next step in putting this interactive page together is to adhere this whole page down onto another base page, which I just picked some white cardstock. And I decided to do that with some foam tape because I do have quite a few photos that I want to fit into my oven. So I'm starting out by cutting my foam tape into very thin strips with my paper trimmer. I think I cut these down to about 1/8 of an inch wide. And I'm going to use these strips to line just along the very bottom part of my page below where my oven is, along the two sides of my oven, and along the top of my oven. And you want to make sure that you don't get any adhesive on the actual oven door flap or the part of the page that's directly below your oven, because that's going to be what forms the pocket that your photo mats are going to sit in. Here I've also adhered some foam tape directly below the slit where my drawer piece is going to slide into. And you want to make sure that you don't get any adhesive above this slit because that's where the cardstock with your journaling is going to slide into. I'm also putting some more foam tape randomly around the interactive elements around this page to make sure that this entire page is even all the way throughout the page. Except for the very left side of the page. And that's because I'm going to punch the holes through this left part and put that page into my album. And I just thought it would be a bit harder to punch through some foam tape. So I decided to just adhere that down with some Tombow Mono permanent adhesive tape runner. So here I'm just lining up the two pages and adhering them down into place. Here I'm just adhering that extra white piece of cardstock onto the inside of my oven door. And I'm also going to create several photo mats with some craft cardstock just to give my photos a bit of extra stability. I just cut them about 1/4 of an inch wider and taller than the photos that I have printed out, and that provides a nice border around all of these photos. To decorate the space on top of my countertops, I decided to go with some painted wood veneer pieces to give this kind of like a cozy homemade kind of vibe. And I just couldn't resist including that small pleather camera piece. That one came in the Paislee press mini kit. And of course, I also included the wood veneer number and a plastic heart to finish up my page. So that completes my page for today. I hope you enjoyed that process video, and I hope you stay tuned for the very last 12 days of interactive December dailies video coming up soon on January 31st, hopefully. And if you have any questions, as usual, feel free to leave me a comment down in the comment section below, and make sure to like this video and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching!